Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You know, you look like a hippie, Greg. I don't know.
He looks just like he's from Huntington Beach to me.
There's a lot of possibilities. Okay, let's all get comfortable and do a little meditation to create a joyful, sacred space tonight. So please close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, imagine that you're on a merry-go-round, right at that height of childhood or adolescence, when on your inhale, the horse goes up, and on the exhale, the horse goes down. Allow yourself to feel the joy of the movement, the wind, music. Notice your friends and family who are there with you as you ride up on the inhale and come down on the exhale. Feeling just the joy of the moment. There's no yesterday, there's no tomorrow, there's just right now. Riding up on the inhale and riding down on the exhale. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. When you're ready, you may open your eyes. Like Elijah, we've seen some more people have joined us during meditation. Thank you, welcome. Happy to see you. When we were logging in, Janet reminded us that in Purim, we are commanded to be joyous no matter what is going on. And earlier today, I was listening to a Jewish podcast, and one of the hosts, Rabbi Jody Gordon, she, talking about Purim, said, mandatory fun is cool. So to get started, I wanted to kind of get people's reactions. You know, what is mandatory fun cool? What does it mean to kind of experience joy during this month or during this day or during this time?
I think you can find lots of different places and opportunities to have joy and happiness. Joy are small moments and happiness is more sustained. And being mindful of it, it helps. Not everything's terrible.
Thank you, Jane. Harry.
Well, my motto since I retired is a full-time seeker of meaning and joy. And I guess it's because it's rare. It's not And it's maybe not that easy to find.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm a seeker. And so anytime I can be joyful, go for it.
Mm. Thank
Or
you,
anytime
Larry.
you can be joyful, go for it. And I love
Yeah.
that wig.
Thank you. If me being overheated in this wig can bring some joy into your lives, then it's worth it. Shelley.
Hi, Greg. I love the wig. I think the wig is great. Being a hairdresser, it was coiffed for you. It's interesting because I am a very joyful person. It's perfect for you. I'm wondering though if it's backwards because sometimes I'm joking. But I think when I'm always in joy, I sometimes I wonder when you're making yourself go into joy, are you experiencing a little guilt because maybe you should be feeling some sadness because what is going on? But I think it's an important thing to make ourselves feel more joy when there is so much sadness going on, because I think the joy that we feel, it becomes exponential. We cause somebody else to be joyful if they're in a sad moment. Like, when I saw Janet in her lovely red wig and feathers, she immediately brought a smile to my face. So I mean, how could you not be enjoy looking at her with that expression of happiness? So that's what I think.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, so it's one of the interesting things about the Jewish calendar is there are certain days that are set aside for certain things. So even right now, or maybe it's been a very challenging year, and I remember the Purim Spiel was canceled last year at my synagogue, and at the time I was like, probably a good idea, but within a couple of weeks I was like, oh my God, thank God we canceled that, because it would have been a disaster if we had that many people together. But still being, so we can sort of remember those disappointments, to remember the current sorrows, but at the same time, there's a point where it's like, hey, it's time to try to seek out some joy. And it's okay to allow ourselves to experience some joy, even though there may be other things there are other things that are going on. I mean, there's almost always something going on. There's not almost always a pandemic, but there's always something you can be upset about if you work for it. So spending at least one day or 1 month working to connect to joy, I think is a big positive. Any other thoughts or comments or dissenting opinions? Yeah, Harry.
Yeah, I just think it's very interesting in our religion where Purim also celebrates the time we were almost destroyed as a people.
Mhm.
Yet here we have the celebration of joy
Mm.
that comes out of it. I guess just to show them that they can't keep us down and we're going to be joyful no matter what. And my dad, who was a Holocaust survivor, was very joyful
Mm.
at times. And it really made a difference in our lives,
Mm.
knowing what he went through, but yet he found joy in life.
Mm.
So I guess that's sort of the message.
Yeah. Ivy, yes.
One of the people that is the most inspirational to me is this woman I know, Mary. And Mary is probably like a 65-year-old woman who has, I think, spina bifida she was born with, and she's paralyzed from the waist down. So her motorized wheelchair is her way of getting around. And not only does she get around, but she is the woman who does the most charitable work of anyone I know in terms of volunteering and helping everyone, whether her neighbors or organizations. And she also is one of the women who has the happiest disposition.
Mm.
And all of the other women, no one has physical handicaps remotely like Mary.
Mm.
And yet Mary has found the way to be joyous in her life.
Mm. Thank you, Ivy. It sounds like a wonderful inspiration. And does anybody else kind of know someone like that who just has overcome a lot, to sort of bring a lot of a lot of joy to the
Mhm.
world, and that's to be inspirational and positive to be around people like that.
I think
Okay.
sometimes it's hard to force yourself to have fun, and but once you're in it
Mm,
and doing something fun or recognizing something fun or silly, you're there,
yeah.
and it feels really good.
One of the people I knew who found a lot of joy, even though he was wheelchair bound, he was on crutches when I first met him, was Cantor David Unterman.
Mm,
And I worked with him. I now have the class that he used to have. I now facilitate that class. So I worked with him as his ongoing substitute. And even though he was dying, and he knew he was dying, he managed to bring humor and laughter and fun into the class when he was able to make it. As he got sicker and sicker, he was calling me more and more often, Carol, can you run the class today?
mm,
But even when he was in an electric wheelchair, he couldn't do anything without, a chair and some help. But he still managed to find joy and to find joy in music. And I find that music often will provoke joy
mm.
or accompany joy, I guess.
Yeah, what is it about that connection between music and joy? Reb Nachman talked about music a lot.
Mm.
Kind of takes you out of the one moment and focuses on the beauty of the sounds.
Mm,
Well, singing is a joyous act. Even if you're singing a sad song. Somebody said in a book, I can't remember, it might have been the author Frank McCourt, it was somebody Irish, said that we don't sing sad songs that awake to be sad. We sing the sad songs to sing the sadness out of ourselves,
mm.
which I thought was a really interesting take on it.
Huh.
I watched Simone Jacobson with the Meaningful Life Center. I don't know if any of you have ever watched his things, but he has one on how the arts bring us a certain transcendence that we need in our humanity. Highly recommend it. It's on YouTube. Really, really good. Simone Jacobson.
Thank you, Karina. Yeah, Reb Nachman of Breslov, he used to say that singing sort of connects us to the divine and it brings us to joy. And that's something we're going to come back to in a little while. Is part of what we're doing in Mussar is we're trying to create pathways in the inner world, trying to make changes, whether they're in our soul or in our neural pathways. And I think music is one of these things that can just hardwire us right into the inner world, bypassing kind of the rational mind, unless the rational mind tells you, I'm American, I don't sing, I have a terrible voice, I'm not a singer. But, all of us, have the opportunity to sing. Yes, Ivy.
And I think music and movements, whether the movement is dancing, formal dancing or just anything,
Mm,
if you let yourself go to music, you have to find joy.
mm,
I think you just have to, like you said with the singing, quell your rational minds and say, oh, I'm not a dancer, I'm not a singer, but just let the music reach down and move or make noises however you want to the music.
wonderful, thank you. That is a great preview. I'm looking forward to the musical part of our program, but we're not quite there yet. So I want to do a little bit of studying of the text of the Book of Esther and what we can learn from some of the Mussar traits. And I want us to remember that we all share these same traits: humility, trust, order, but we have different amounts of each. And one of the things we can do is we become more familiar with Mussar and more familiar with ourselves. We can start saying, what soul trait is being triggered by this? Or what soul trait am I exhibiting right now? Or in the case of this story, I'd like us to try to figure out what are some of the soul traits that we might be seeing in this story. So this is from chapter 4 of the Book of Esther. And may I have a volunteer to begin the reading? Now, maybe just for those of us who aren't as familiar with the story, Esther became queen of the Persian Empire after a little bit of a beauty contest. And there's a evil advisor, Haman, to the king, who gets mad at her uncle Mordecai and has gotten the king to set a decree that all of the Jews are going to be slaughtered. And Mordecai has sent a message to Esther saying, hey, you're Jewish and you're the queen, we need you to intercede. And so this is part of her answer to Mordecai's request.
I'll read, Greg.
Sure,
I'll
thank
read.
you.
11. Esther said, only if the king extends the golden scepter to him may he live. Now I have not been summoned to visit the king for the last 30 days.
Okay, let's
12.
pause there.
Okay.
Okay, so what do we, can we attribute any soul traits, or what might this remind us of? Esther's response. Is there a soul trait that comes to mind here?
Humility.
Why so? Did someone say? I heard someone say humility, but I couldn't see who it was.
It was Krina.
Krina, can you say more about that?
Well, she knows her place as far as the law of the king. She knows that if she, not being presumptuous, that she can, just because she's the queen, she can go into the throne room and expect him to make an exception for her. She's realizing that she face.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Janet, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I would say patience.
Hmm.
She has to, it's not up to her, although it kind of is. It's up to the king has to do, it's interesting that she hasn't visited the king for 30 days. So she's one of many, many wives, which tells us something here.
Hmm. Yeah,
She's not the A1 wife that we know of.
Hmm. Right, so maybe this is patience. It's like, maybe it's humility. Hey, it's not my place to go. I need to be summoned. And by the way, if I show up unsummoned, the rule is that you can you can be executed. You can be killed. So I'll just be patient. Okay, great. So Ivy, will you continue, please?
Sure. Number 12, when Mordecai was told what Esther had said, Mordecai had this message delivered to Esther. Do not imagine that you, of all the Jews, will escape with your life by being in the king's palace.
Okay, let's pause here. Okay, so what might we see in this first part of Mordecai's message here? Any soul traits come to mind? Or just reactions to this?
Greg, I think Mordecai is saying, even though you're a queen, that doesn't make you safe. You are one of his wives, but just understand you're not that special, and so I think he's is suggesting humility here.
Mhm.
To
Yeah,
know
so
her place.
he's suggesting to her some level of humility. And what is he exhibiting by speaking out in this way? I mean, he's given, you know, a pretty definitive no, but here he is. The conversation is not over. So what is Mordecai exhibiting?
Alacrity,
Alacrity. Yeah, say more.
chutzpah, chutzpah.
Chutzpah. Yeah, this conversation is not over until I say it's over. I also think this is an example of silence. Remember, silence governs when we speak and when we stay quiet. And he's like, you know, hey, this is an emergency here. And by the way, you know, you're still one of us. You know, you might rationalize to yourself that you'll be just fine because you're the queen and nobody knows you're Jewish. Okay, so Ivy, continue.
On the contrary, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another quarter, while you and your father's house will perish. And who knows, perhaps you have attained to royal position for just such a moment.
Right, so let's go right to that last section in the bowl. Perhaps you have attained to royal position for just such a moment. So what is Mordecai saying there?
You
It's
have,
her purpose.
you have the position. You can use it.
Hmm.
Don't run away from it.
Maybe you were born for this.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, Randy.
Yeah, I think a little bit like in the song you have for later. I think Mordecai, in a very clever way, without really saying it's saying, well, yes, you are a queen. You're married to this earthly king, but that's not the only king there is. You have a different station. And yes, if you give in to your fear, that you're forgetting who you are, and as a person, as a Jewish person, you're forgetting who you are. That you actually have a relationship to a king that's more important than the person you're married to. And you should think about that. And that king demands or gives you the opportunity to do good in the world, that you've been given some unique ability to do good, and perhaps the timing and positioning of your life. And it's like Mordecai speaking beyond her, and our lives is to some significant purpose. Life is not meaningless. Like with the sparks in the universe, they're not all just fading and going away. Those things can connect up and make light and hope and a future.
Thank you, Randy. You said a whole bunch of really beautiful things there. And yes, thank you. Jane, you had your hand up.
I was thinking it gives her a sense of control, where even though her role is on the side, she still has the power to influence for the good of the people. And I think that's important for her to understand, that she could be supportive even if she has a small role.
Thank you. Yeah, so it changes her perception of herself. And it's interesting, I don't have the next few verses, but her answer to Mordecai is, okay, tell everybody to fast for 3 days, and I'm going to fast for 3 days, and then I will approach the king. So, and, to pray for me. And so it's, I think, very much along the lines of kind of Randy's interpretations, like, hey, okay, I'm going to really have to, marshal my spiritual energy to take this on. Yeah, Janet. Janet, did you raise your hand? Nope. Oh, okay. All right. And so then what does this say about our soul traits? If we were talking about humility before. So where does this fit? Where does humility fit in to this story? In terms of maybe the journey, the transformation that that Esther's undergoing at this moment. Yeah, Ivy.
We discussed in another Mussar class that humility, like all the other traits, you could have too much or too little. So if I'm too humble, I won't use the power I have, because you'll tell me you really have the power to influence this, and I'll go, me? No, I can't do anything at all. So I'm taking humility to the opposite extent, which Esther could have done by saying, I can't do anything. Don't even suggest I do anything. I'm so humble, I'm nothing. When she really, and everybody really is something. We each can do things, unique things.
Yes, beautiful. Yes. And that phrase from Mordecai, sort of at the bottom, perhaps you've attained to royalty or to your royal position for just this moment. It's that same word that we see later when Esther puts on her royalty. And I have to say, it really annoys me that it gets translated as put on her royal clothes. That was not, the clothes are nowhere mentioned in the Hebrew text. That was just added by the translators or by the rabbinic interpretation, because I think it is a much bigger message about how we can show up in the world. So Ivy anticipated my next slide, this idea that humility exists on a spectrum. And I think early on, somebody commented that, okay, she felt like, hey, it's not really my place to go in there. And the message was, actually, it is your place to go in there. And if you don't go in there, if you don't rise to this moment, nobody else is going to do it. That's it. It's death for everybody. And by the way, it'll be death for you too, if you don't rise to this moment. Okay, so now we are going to, I'm not going to do that. We're going to chant this Purim Nigun that I helped, that I co-created with Jacqueline Raffi, who's currently she's a cantorial soloist, and in a few months she will be an ordained cantor. So I put the Nigun in the chat. Can everybody see that? Okay, so there's a button at the bottom of the screen, Randy, that says chat. And if you click that, then you should be able to see that. Now, the reason why we, Nigun is kind of a melody or something that you chant over and over again. And is anyone here familiar with Nigunim or Nigun? And you can maybe talk about sort of what your experience has been with them before. Carol.
The Niguns that I sung don't have any words. They're just die or just sounds.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes and often they don't have words to them, but it can also be a simple melody. And so this one has some hand gestures that goes with it, which you couldn't see in the video, but the way it goes is the first, let's put on our royalty. Let's all do this together. So sort of from the crown, And then let's put on our royalty. It's kind of like our armor or clothes. And then we open up to the world. Let's put on our royalty. Let's put on our royalty. And then at the end, we go to our heart. Let's put on our royalty. And then again, when we switch to the Hebrew, it's Vatilbash Esther Malchut. Vatibash Esther Malchut. Vatibash Esther. Tibash Esther. Tibat Esther Malchut. Okay, so because of the way Zoom works, we should keep our selves muted, but I invite you all to sing along and to do the gestures. Let's put on our royalty. Let's put on our royalty. Let's put on our royalty. Put on our royalty. Put on our royalty. Vatilbash Esther Malchut. Vatilbash Esther Malchut. Vatilbash Esther. Tilbash Esther. Tilbash Esther Malchut. One more time. Let's put on our royalty. Let's put on our royalty. Let's put on our royalty. Put on our royalty. Put on our royalty. Vatilbash Esther Malchut. Vatilbash Esther Malchut. Vatilbash Esther. Tilbash Esther. Tilbash Esther Malchut. Well, we'll use that as inspiration to go into our breakout rooms. And when we're there, I'd like you to maybe talk about what would it mean for you to put on your royalty. And you can share a time when you helped someone, when someone helped you put on your royalty, or maybe you helped someone else. You were the Mordechai, you gave the pep talk, or you gave the tough love. And I would say, is this a time when you should put on your royalty? That was definitely the time for Esther, but it's not necessarily the time right now, or maybe it is. So those are our prompts. So let me open the breakout rooms here. Okay, so away you go. Eliza, you're in a group of 3, so if you would like to join, you can. If you want to hang out with me, or I also know you have some kids that are running around, so really whatever works best for you. And there she goes. All right, well, for those of you who are streaming, this is going to bring to the end of the streaming portion of our Purim wisdom for coping with a pandemic. Thank you so much for being here today. I invite you to come by AmericanMussar.com if you'd like to sign up to be on the mailing list to get our weekly email prompts. And If not, I will see you next week.